Janelle steps into a vibrant new school with her 6-year-old son, Tyree, filled with hope for a brighter future. This town prides itself on diversity and inclusivity, and Janelle believes she's found the ideal place for Tyree to flourish. But her dreams take a dark turn when Tyree reveals a shocking truth. A staff member is not only denying him his free lunch, but also using hurtful slurs. Subscribe to continue following the story. The morning air was brisk as Janelle tightened Tyree's backpack straps and gave him a gentle push towards the school's entrance. "Remember, sweetheart," she called after him, "you're going to have so much fun, and they'll give you free breakfast and lunch." This was his first day at a new school, a chance for a fresh start in a town that had promised so much more diversity and inclusivity than their last one. Breakfast was a mix of excitement and nerves as Tyree sat at the table, staring at his cereal with wide eyes. The clock ticked loudly, making the moment feel even more important. His mother, Janelle, chose this school because it was close to their home. She had looked at many schools, but this one stood out because of its motto, "Where every child shines." This phrase was on every brochure and the school's website, and it made her hopeful for her little boy's future. As she watched Tyree, she wondered if this school would be the right place for him to grow and show his talents. When Janelle arrived at the school, she was impressed by the well-kept grounds and the welcoming smile of the principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had assured her that Tyree would be in good hands. The hallways were a cacophony of chattering children and clanging lockers, a symphony of new beginnings echoing through the walls. As they walked to his classroom, Tyree's little hand in hers, Janelle felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach loosen. This was going to be okay. The bell rang, signaling the start of the school day, and Janelle kissed Tyree's cheek before letting go. "I'll be back at 3 p.m., right here," she promised, watching his eyes dart around the room, trying to take in everything at once. He nodded, his voice lost in the din of the children. She watched him take a seat at a small desk, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, and felt a pang of sadness. But she knew this was the best thing for him. New friends, new opportunities, a place where he could truly be himself. Lunchtime rolled around, and Janelle found herself counting the minutes, eager to hear about Tyree's first adventures at his new school. She had packed a sandwich for him, just in case he was too shy to ask for food, and hoped that the free meals would help him feel less anxious. As she drove up to the school, her heart swelled with excitement to see his face light up with tales of new friends and funny teachers. Subscribe to continue following the story. But when Janelle picked Tyree up, his expression was anything but joyful. His eyes were red, and his voice trembled. Janelle pulled Tyree into a tight embrace, her heart aching at the sight of her son's distress. "Sweetheart, what happened? Why are you so upset?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. Tyree's voice trembled as he spoke. "Mom, it was awful. Karen, the lady in the cafeteria, she wouldn't let me have any food. She said I didn't belong here and started calling me names." Tears welled up in his eyes, reflecting the hurt he felt inside. Janelle's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That's simply unacceptable. This is supposed to be a welcoming, inclusive environment. I can't believe someone would treat you that way," she exclaimed, her anger rising at the thought of her son being mistreated. "I just wanted to eat my lunch, Mom," Tyree sniffled, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't do anything wrong. Why would she say those things to me?" Janelle stroked Tyree's hair gently, her heart breaking for him. "Oh, my dear, sweet boy. You've done nothing wrong. This is not your fault. That woman had no right to speak to you that way," she reassured him, her voice filled with warmth and love. Tyree looked up at her, his eyes glistening with tears. "I thought this school was going to be different, Mom. I thought I'd finally fit in and make friends. But now I just want to go home." Janelle pulled him closer, wrapping her arms around him as if to shield him from the world. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you had to experience that. But I promise, we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to make sure this never happens again," she vowed, determination shining in her eyes. "Do I have to go back tomorrow, Mom?" "I don't want to face her again," Tyree asked, his voice filled with apprehension. "We'll take some time to regroup, and then we'll figure out the best way to address this with the school. Your safety and well-being are the most important things." Tyree nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "Okay, Mom. Thank you for understanding." Janelle leaned down and kissed his forehead softly. "Always, my love. I'm here for you, and we're going to get through this together." Subscribe to continue following the story. The following day, Janelle sent Tyree back to school with a heavy heart, unsure of what the day would hold. She had considered keeping him home, but she didn't want to give in to the fear that had taken root. She hoped that maybe, just maybe, it had been a misunderstanding. But when she arrived at 3 p.m. to pick him up, the sadness in his eyes told a different story. Karen had denied him food again, and this time, she'd gone so far as to scream at a kind little girl who offered to share her lunch. Janelle's heart raced as she gripped the phone, the words from her friend echoing in her mind. "This isn't the first time," her friend said, her voice laced with concern. "I had to move my daughter from that school because of Karen. She's a racist." Janelle felt a chill run down her spine, realizing that this was not an isolated incident, but a pattern of behavior. "What do you mean?" Janelle asked, her voice trembling. "What exactly happened?" Her friend's response only heightened Janelle's growing sense of unease. "Karen has a way of singling out black kids, making their lives miserable. She's manipulative, and she knows how to play the system. My daughter was one of her targets, and I had to pull her out of that school before the situation escalated." Janelle felt the knot in her stomach tighten. She had always trusted the school to provide a safe and nurturing environment for her daughter, but now she realized that her trust had been misplaced. She knew she had to take action. With newfound determination, Janelle decided to meet with the principal the very next day. Mrs. Rodriguez's office was a beacon of calm in the storm of emotions that had been brewing since Tyree's first day. As Janelle recounted the events, the principal's expression grew more and more troubled. "We take accusations of bias very seriously," she said firmly, her voice laced with concern. "But I need to see it for myself to truly understand the gravity of the situation." Janelle agreed, and they hatched a plan to observe Karen during the lunch period using the school's security cameras. Subscribe to continue following the story. On the third day of school, Janelle and Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the dimly lit security room, their eyes glued to the monitors. As the children filed into the cafeteria, Janelle's heart raced, her fingers tense around the armrests. She watched as Karen smilingly handed out food to the children, her eyes lingering on Tyree as he approached. But when he held out his tray, Karen's smile morphed into a sneer. "Not for you," she spat, shoving him away. Janelle's eyes widened in shock as she watched Tyree's shoulders slump. The principal's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. They saw a kind girl approach Tyree, her small hand extending a sandwich. "Here," she whispered, her voice filled with empathy. But before Tyree could take it, Karen swooped in, snatching the food away. "You are not supposed to feed a black thing," she yelled at the trembling child. "If you do it again, you won't get any lunch either." With a dramatic flourish, she tossed the sandwich into the trash. Janelle's fists clenched, and she could feel the rage simmering just beneath her skin. She had to fight the urge to run to her son, to scoop him up and protect him from the ugliness of the world. But she knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she turned to Mrs. Rodriguez, her eyes blazing. "We need to put an end to this," she said through gritted teeth. The principal nodded, her expression grim. "We will," she said, picking up the phone. She dialed a number and spoke in a firm tone. "I need you to come to my office immediately." As they waited, Janelle could see the resolve in Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes, and she felt a spark of hope. Together, they would make sure that Tyree, and all the other children, would be safe from the likes of Karen. The bell signaling the end of lunch rang, and Janelle felt her stomach lurch as the principal stood, gesturing for her to follow. It was time to confront the woman who had so blatantly abused her power and hurt her son. The principal walked Janelle to her office, and their footsteps made a serious sound. Janelle and the principal shared a worried look, but their attention quickly turned to the door when Karen walked in with a slight smirk on her face. Acting innocent, Karen asked, "Is everything okay?" Her casual tone made the tense atmosphere even worse. Subscribe to continue following the story. Karen, Mrs. Rodriguez began, her voice steady, "We've received a number of concerning reports about your behavior during lunch today, and we've just watched and reviewed the security footage. We saw you shove and push Tyree away and denied him lunch." Janelle watched as the color drained from Karen's face. "What you've done is unacceptable, and we can no longer allow you to be in a position where you can harm these children." The tension in the room was palpable as Mrs. Rodriguez's words hung in the air. Karen's eyes widened, and her hands trembled as she realized the gravity of the situation. Janelle observed the scene with a mixture of anger and unbelief. "Karen, this is a serious matter," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her tone firm but not unkind. "We take the safety and well-being of our students very seriously, and your actions today have put one of them at risk. This is not the first time we've received reports of concerning behavior from you, and we've tried to work with you to address these issues, but it's clear that we need to take more drastic measures." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She knew she had made a mistake, but the realization that her actions could jeopardize her career was overwhelming. Janelle continued, "We've discussed this extensively, and I've decided that I have no choice but to suspend you pending a full investigation. We cannot allow you to continue working with our students until we can be certain that this will not happen again." The room fell silent, save for the sound of Karen's muffled sobs. Janelle reached across the desk and placed a hand on Karen's arm, her expression softening. "I know this is difficult, Karen, but we have to do what's best for the children. I hope you understand." Karen's smile faltered, and she began to stutter. "I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a misunderstanding. I didn't know he was supposed to get food. I'm sorry." But her words fell flat in the face of the damning evidence. The principal's expression was unyielding. "Your actions are inexcusable, and they will not be tolerated in this school." The police arrived shortly after, the sound of sirens echoing through the quiet hallways. The sight of the officers sent a ripple of fear through Janelle, but she knew that this was necessary. Karen had no idea the police had been called to arrest her. She was escorted out in handcuffs as she continued to beg for forgiveness, but it was too late. Subscribe to continue following the story. As the officers firmly gripped Karen's arms, leading her towards the exit. Janelle watched with a mixture of relief and sorrow, knowing that this was the only way to put an end to the turmoil that had plagued their lives for far too long. Karen's cries for mercy fell on deaf ears, her pleas growing more desperate with each step. The sound of the police car's engine fading into the distance marked the end of a chapter, and the beginning of a new, uncertain future. Janelle took a deep breath, her eyes lingering on the empty hallway, before turning and walking away, her steps a little lighter than they had been just moments before. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and apologies from the school administration. The story spread quickly, and more parents came forward with similar tales of Karen's prejudice. The school held an emergency assembly to address the issue, with Mrs. Rodriguez speaking candidly about the importance of inclusivity and the unfortunate events that had unfolded. Janelle felt a mix of anger and relief as she watched her son stand tall beside her, his chin up despite the tears that still lingered in his eyes. The school administration wasted no time, swiftly implementing robust anti-discrimination policies and providing comprehensive training for all staff. Karen, the perpetrator, found herself swiftly dismissed from her position and publicly condemned by the local media. Janelle recognized that this was merely a small step in the grand scheme of things, but it was a crucial first stride. This sent a resounding message: hate had no place in their school, no place in their town, and most certainly no place in Tyree's life. Tyree slowly started to heal, making friends and finding joy in the classroom once again. And as Janelle tucked him into bed each night, she whispered a new mantra into his ear: "You are loved, you are important, and you do belong." It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter what it took. We appreciate you tuning in. Please consider subscribing to support the growth of our channel.